Hey everyone, I'm Laura Adams, personal finance author and expert for Finder.com. I am so excited to be here with Saira Rahman from Fundrise. This is going to be a really fun interview. I am so excited to connect. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Fundrise.
Absolutely. So it's so nice to meet you, Laura. And I've been at Fundrise now for a little over 5 months, and I am charged with building out our new suite of products. So figuring out some of our product strategy underneath the hood in terms of additional fintech products, and simultaneously kind of helping alongside in some of the business development on smaller things surrounding some of our existing products.
For those who are not familiar with Fundrise, give us a little bit of a background on, what the platform is, what you offer investors, and, a little bit about maybe folks who are new to the industry, what they can expect if they get involved with Fundrise.
Absolutely. So Fundrise is an investment platform for alternative assets. And I feel like most people don't know exactly what alternative assets are. But if you think about Facebook, Uber, things along that nature that raised venture capital before they became public companies, that's really the private market. So that's where people can trade things that are not traded within public markets via stocks or other more liquid investments. So today, big institutions invest in that industry, but generally, the vast majority of the public is unable to invest in any of that part of the market. So what Fundrise is trying to do is give access to those people and really help them gain access to where a lot of people are investing and are making a lot of money, but don't necessarily have access. So at Fundrise, what we did was we innovated through regulatory hurdles. We built out a ton of technology and we verticalized the entire real estate aspect. And recently, we also started building into what we call our innovation fund, which is our venture arm. So bringing out two different types of investments to the retail audience.
Love it. If you were speaking with somebody who is saying, I really want to invest in real estate, what would you tell somebody who's brand new, who's thinking, gosh, I really want to be an investor? How can they get started? What is like the minimum requirement that they may have to put up front to become an investor through Fundrise?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So, a little over a year and a half ago, maybe almost 2 years ago at this point, we opened up our investment platform to the $10 investor. So, I think a lot of people, especially a lot of other areas where you are able to invest in real estate, there's really high minimums that require you to have a significant amount of capital in order to be able to access real estate. And that's one of the unique things about Fundrise is that we're able to offer someone for as little as $10 access to that same institutional grade real estate. I didn't mention earlier, but we have over $3 billion in assets, probably closer to $4 billion at this point. I'm probably dated in terms of my AUM, but we have that sizable amount of investments that we're making all over what we call like the Smile States, the sunny part of the U.S. Available to our investors to be able to invest in.
That's amazing. $10. I mean, so I'm curious about, what you might recommend for somebody who's just starting. Maybe if there are women out there who are feeling like, gosh, I'm not sure about this industry. Is there a smart way they can think about adding these alternative investments to their portfolio?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're looking to diversify your portfolio, the first thing I'll say is, in my opinion, the 60/40 portfolio is dead. So stocks and bonds should not be the only things inside of your portfolio. You should be considering alternatives. That is where a lot of the money, in my opinion, is made. So the consideration then is, how much money do you have in equities? How much money do you have in bonds? And how much money do you want to allocate to things that are not correlated to the equities market and the bond market? How many other alts are you looking at? And what's your tolerance for risk? Keeping in mind that it's illiquid. So your investment is likely going to have to be held at whatever investment vehicle you choose for some period of time. And then keeping also in mind that it is still risky, if not more risky, because you're unable to transact upon it if you feel some form of volatility. So in my opinion, if I was talking to a friend, as I do often with a lot of my girlfriends, I would say you should take a look at every single different asset class and consider yourself. You should at least consider investing in each niche to some extent, dependent upon obviously your risk tolerance, and really figure out what portion of your wealth you're comfortable locking up in a diversified portfolio that includes both the alternatives, but also obviously stocks and bonds.
Yeah, it's a great way to think about it, and limiting that exposure is key, right? The name of the game is diversification.
Right.
That's how we win. That's how we make sure we're not putting too much of our portfolio into any one thing that might end up losing money. So I'm curious about your story. How did you get into fintech in general and end up in the real estate space?
So I started my career in derivatives. I spent a little over 11 years trading in sales and trading specifically for a spinoff of KeyBank's Capital Markets Group. And at the time that I started, it was May of 2008, which was a terrible time to be in derivatives. But we prevailed. And at the time that I left, I was running our West Coast book out of Seattle, which was across 8 different banks. And it was kind of this natural shift from working on the trade desk to working for a community bank that was one of my clients at the time. So I shifted to that community bank, worked there through a portion of the pandemic, was picked off from that community bank to join a tiny little neobank called HM Bradley, where I was the head of finance, and eventually jumped ship from there to take a break over the summer just before starting at Fundrise. And really, all of those roles in some way, shape, or form actually touched real estate. I don't know how many people know this, but interest rate derivatives are very commonplace on commercial real estate. Banks obviously have tons of interest rate derivatives as well. HM Bradley was much more of a financial strategy, which was the nature of my background in terms of being able to kind of work through that. And then joining Fundrise it felt very natural. Maybe it's not as natural when you look at my resume, but it felt like a very natural shift from all of the things that I've done historically.
If there are any young budding entrepreneurs or fintech professionals that are watching who are really thinking about how to best progress in their career, or even, how to get started in the world of fintech, what would you recommend for them?
That's a great question. I think it's twofold. I think first and foremost that there's no such thing as knowing exactly what you want to do early in your career. I think what you learn foundationally early in your career can absolutely accelerate you later in your career. I think a lot of my mathematical background, a lot of my ability to talk to people, that certainly has helped me throughout my career. But I also think there's things that can move you laterally, such as being able to do financial strategy and then suddenly shifting into fintech. I think a lot of people, if they're looking into fintech, it is very natural to have a very deep finance background and then move into fintech as well. You don't necessarily have to start right away in fintech. And I think ultimately the biggest takeaway that I've had is that no resume is this perfect resume that just levels up every single time and the next job just feels natural. Usually, especially as you start to grow, you'll find different paths and different options for yourself. And it's up to you to really build your own adventure and figure out where you want to end up.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I definitely agree. I'm curious about, education. If you feel like folks who get into fintech need to have advanced degrees in finance, do you think that formal education is key, or do you think that a lot of people can kind of learn on the job and learn as they go?
Yeah. I'm a little bit of a contrarian on this one, so I'm going to apologize in advance for everyone that disagrees with me. But my parents talked me into going to a school where I had a lot of grants and scholarships because they actually didn't really believe in debt. And I ended up going through school. I studied engineering and finance and economics. And when I graduated and joined the derivatives firm that I belonged to, I quickly came to realize that less than 5% of what I learned was really applicable And the stuff that I did learn in school was more or less the soft skills that I needed to leverage in order to excel at selling derivatives. So I don't think that you need that much education generally. Like, let's even removing the fintech piece. I don't think that you need that much education to excel. I think you need, for what it's worth, some type of university on your resume. If you're going to a top tier investment bank, if you're going to a top tier fintech company, they are looking for some type of university degree. But at the end of the day, I think the education piece is much less relevant than a lot of people would lead you to believe.
Yeah. In terms of dealing with, let's say, diversity in the industry and inclusion, have you felt that you felt any barriers? Have you maybe had good mentors in the field that have helped bring you along? How have you felt the industry is doing in terms of just inclusion and specifically for women coming into the industry?
I think it's evolved a lot over the years. So I want to caveat by saying I don't know that everyone's experience right now would be the same as what mine was. There is obviously a historical bias in a lot of the women that have worked over the course of the last 10, 15, 20 years in terms of the progression, because I think there was finally a significant push towards equality over the course of, I'll call it the last 5 years especially. But when I first started, I was the only female. I was the only woman in every single boardroom. I was the only female that was talking to board C-suites and dealing with business owners. And it was hard. I was raised in traditional finance with male mentors, and I thought that was incredibly difficult and something that was very hard to overcome. I was really fortunate. I still am fortunate. I have some wonderful mentors that are male. I will say that I think, again, with the shift, and one of the things that drew me into Fundrise is that we do have a very strong DEI strategy. I think 2 steps back, a lot of companies claim that they do. I have worked for, I can think of one entity in particular that just made the claim that they do DEI. And I think there's the verbal claim and then there's actually acting on it. The lovely thing about Fundrise is that we have a lot of very strong women that have extremely high EQ that are also very open to being mentors. And it feels much more organic for me for the first time in the years and years that I've been working. I feel like I have that sponsorship within the entity that I work for. That's never existed for me before. The other experience that I kind of want to piggyback on top of that is that for the first time in my career, I also am not one of the only, if not the only minority on my team. We utilize Donut at our company, which is just this interactive method of meeting random people that are not within your segment of the company. And I finally met my first Muslim coworker, which I have never had a Muslim coworker before. And it was just really nice to find someone that I could relate to on a religious level as well. So I think Fundrise is this unique segment where we're really pushing our DEI to the next level. But I don't think that that's always historically been the case, at least in my career and in my experience.
Yeah, that's great to hear that you feel like it's evolving. I want to circle back to something you said about your parents and, not really wanting or believing in debt. I'm curious if that philosophy has kind of shaped you personally as you've managed your own personal finances, or, maybe what lessons you may have taken from them that have helped you in your own just personal financial life.
Yeah, I think if you talk to a lot of my friends, they'll tell you that the chip on my shoulder is exactly that. It's that my parents were raised with what I'll call an immigrant scarcity mentality. And they focused very much on like the Dave Ramsey model of get rid of all of your debt and focus solely on building your income. And for me, at least growing up, that was something that was ingrained into me. And then when I was graduating, I got into a ton of really great universities, but my parents essentially struck all of them off of the list because they didn't want me to enter adulthood with debt. So I ended up at the school that gave me the most grants, the most funding. And from that, I really built my thesis around, I don't believe that people that enter this country are necessarily well educated on the complexity of our financial system. I don't believe that women were necessarily prepared prior to the most recent generation in understanding how their wallet works, how banking works, how to build their own companies. I don't think we were trained properly to do that. So my life thesis has been that I really believe that we need to do more and work harder to educate the people that weren't entering into the ring with the same level of experience as everyone else and with the same level of education as someone who is wealthy or someone that has been in the financial system for a while and knows how to maneuver it well. So for me, I think you guys know this, but I did have a podcast that I was using for financial literacy called Girls Just Want to Have Funds. We're in the process of rebranding that as I speak, but it's just been something that I've been very focused on, and it's certainly been the root driving cause behind everywhere that I've gone to work. I think that's also one of the premises of Fundrise, is to not only give that access, but to also ensure that everyone gets the level of financial literacy that they deserve versus just what's been handed to them.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. I'm also a podcaster. I've been podcasting since 2007 on the Money Girl Show. And so that is also a huge passion. What would be the biggest and maybe best piece of financial advice you would give somebody who's just starting their career?
Learn how to live beneath your means so that you can save and invest as much as you can when you're young. I think I was really fortunate to be in traditional finance, but like have the growth almost forced upon me because of the way that we functioned. But I look at so many of my friends that are just now starting to catch up in terms of like figuring out how to do things. And I just wish that rather than, getting the slightly bigger apartment and like doing things like going out every single night, going out to eat all of the time, like just making all of those extra expenditures. I wish that someone had sat down with, to some extent, even myself, and just been like, here's how you should do it. And like spend so much less, because you don't need to spend your entire paycheck, barring like in extreme circumstances. You do not need to spend your whole paycheck.
Yeah, Saira, that's such good advice. And I would say I kind of fell prey to the same thing. And I think there's almost a mentality of almost entitlement when you begin working and you feel like, I'm working hard for this money. Like, I'm just going to go take that vacation or go out with friends and spend it. And you're not really seeing the opportunity cost of that money. Is there anything else that you would like to share with viewers about anything going on with Fundrise, anything, coming up that maybe, on the horizon for Fundrise that you would like to share with viewers?
I will say, I think there is a lot of really cool stuff going on. I don't know how much I'm allowed to expose of all of it, but if anyone's interested, I do have a link for everyone that's at comingtofinder.com if they're interested in joining Fundrise and haven't had the experience of our incredible website yet. It's www.fundrise.com/Saira, and you can sign up there for our platform. But I do think the next few years are going to be really exciting at Fundrise, and I encourage anyone that's interested in the alternative investing space to take a look. But no, I think that's everything at this point. Thank you so much for having me, Laura.
It's been so fun to chat and get to know you a little bit and learn a little bit more about Fundrise as well. So give us that URL one more time and maybe spell your name for the viewers.
Sure, absolutely. It's www.fundrise, so fundrise.com/SAIRA.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope everyone will get a little bit of motivation maybe out of this interview and take maybe the next steps toward financial literacy or even investing in alternative assets if that is something on your radar right now. Thanks so much.